listening to Stories from Real Life, a podcast by engaging storytellers for engaged story listeners. Here's your host, author and journalist, Melvin E. Edwards.
Hello again, and welcome to this October 8th edition of Stories from Real Life. I'm your host, Melvin E. Edwards. Thanks for joining me on today's storytelling journey. Our guest this week is Neil Rogers. Let's find out more about Neil before we begin our conversation.
On today's episode of Stories from Real Life with Melvin E. Edwards. Neil Rogers has been owner and vice president of marketing and sales at Rogers Marketing for nearly 26 years. He built his career and business leveraging both old school and new school marketing and sales techniques. In his book, Bar Tips, Everything I Needed to Know in Sales I Learned Behind the Bar, Neil shares the skills and tools learned during his early working years as a bartender that led to his success as an entrepreneur and industry leader. Pour yourself a beverage and join this fascinating conversation. Here's your host, Melvin E. Edwards, with this week's guest, Neil Rogers.
Neil, welcome to this week's storytelling journey.
Melvin, how you doing, man? Glad to be here.
I'm doing great. How are things up there in New Hampshire?
Lovely today. It's beautiful. Little rocky getting in from Milwaukee last night, but we did okay. We got here.
I'm sure it's not 95 like it's expected to be here in South Texas today.
No, we are. Let's see what we say. I think it's like 75. So it's really a nice day.
Very nice. Very nice. All right, so I first want to discuss your book, which is called Bar Tips, Everything I Needed to Know in Sales I Learned Behind the Bar. I'll ask you some specific questions later, but I first want to start by having you tell me a couple of stories from your time as a bartender, whether they're included in that book or not.
Well, one I was thinking about this because Cam tipped me off on that, and I said, one of the ones I don't talk about a lot that I think is worth telling is really around how to read a room, right? And so whether you're in a boardroom or at a bar or whatever, what are your surroundings? In the bar world, it was like, okay, who are the crazies? Who's the leader of the group? Which is another one. When they come in and there's 4 or 5 of them, and you need to know who's going to organize the drink order, who's going to collect the money, who's back then, because credit cards weren't as predominant as they are now. And then also, if we have a problem, who am I going to? Right? So that's the person you identify. So that's one way of reading the room. And you get this relationship going with them, and they know they're the lead person. So there's an importance they feel because they know the bartender's attentive to them. So it's kind of a cool little symbiotic gig going on. And but one time, this is when they really started to crack down on, over drinking and stuff. This is now in the early 80s. And we went through this whole thing about, shutting people off and when does that occur, and then all that. So this guy was in, and he was drinking Jose Cuervo Gold on the rocks. He was of some size, and he was going pretty good on the rocks. So finally I just said, I don't know about this one. So I went over to the manager. I said, his name was Gibbs Freeman. Gibbs, I'm going to shut this guy off, and I'm going to tell you right now, he is not going to like it. So, well, that's exactly what happened. I shut him off. But prior to that, I alerted the manager, who alerted the doorman, and we were ready to call the cops if we needed to. So it's just about, knowing what your surroundings are, knowing who your allies are. So whether you're in a boardroom or a sales situation or whatever that might be, who are the people that are on your team. In the case of the group that comes in, I find Susie or Bill or whomever is going to be the leader, and we work with them. In this case, I needed extra help, and I went right to my manager and the doorman. So it ended okay. He did leave, but he wanted a piece of me. There was no question.
You want
about
a piece
it.
of me? You want a piece of me?
Oh my goodness!
Did he say that to you?
You. Oh yeah. Well, he was. They were holding him back, and he's got this finger going. Oh yeah. And here I am, 23 years old, and it's like, well, anyway. So I don't know. This guy might have been in his 30s. I don't know. Back then, he could have been in his 40s, 30s, or whatever it was. He certainly wasn't my age. So that's an interesting one that I don't tell a lot, and then the one I do kind of tell a lot, but I believe it's worth repeating, especially if we're talking about giving some tips, if you will, to prospective salespeople or current salespeople or business people of any type. And it really gets around humility and being right. And what we say, so back in the day, I was selling food for food distributorship, right? So we sold food, we sold all the wares, food and all the wares for restaurants, hotels, hospitals, everything, right? I mean, I think there was 200,000 items in our catalog.
Wow.
That type of, it was crazy. And so, and there was a guy that worked there. His name was Jim Galliu. And Jim is what I consider a mentor of mine. He taught me some really great lessons in my mid-20s or whatever I was at when I started that job. And one of the ones that he really, and he was kind of the wiseacre guy, but but he was also a confident guy. And he was, like he'd give you a dig or whatnot. He'd drink a beer, all that stuff. And he gave you some good tips. And the most important tip I believe he ever gave me, and I was also, there was another guy that worked with him, and he felt the exact same way. And that was, whenever anything goes wrong, start here, right? What was my role in this? How could I have done better? Before you start lashing out, and in this case, if let's say something wasn't delivered properly, before you start lashing out at the truck driver or the guy who picked it in the warehouse or whatever, did I place the order on time? Did I place it right? What did I do? So two things happen there. It kind of, it keeps you from lashing out, making you and everybody else look bad, when really maybe there's a solution you can provide that nobody even detects. And that may be getting your butt in your car, going up to the warehouse and picking it up and just delivering it without a question. Oh yeah, well, something must have happened, whatever. Nothing, no worries. Here it is. We're all set. So what's the bar story that goes along with this? I know you're wondering that. So this guy, Dennis Mayer, he was working with us at this place called Tia's in Boston. Now, Tia's was, and I think still is, a pretty high-powered, really busy place on a Sunday. Probably going to be crazy busy tonight, at least at happy hour. And this woman came up to the bar, and Dennis was a veteran of this. He had been working the bar for 15 years. He was a really smart guy. And I'm wondering, what are you doing hanging out with us? I mean, it's like, you could be doing so much more. And we all turned out all right. But I mean, Dennis was just like, okay. So anyways, a woman comes up to the bar, and she says, I'd like a vodka martini straight up. Okay. Dennis does what he always does. He ices down the mixing glass, pours the drink, and has a nice up glass that he's already put some ice in to chill it. Dumps out the ice, pours the drink in there, does a little lemon twist for the vodka martini, puts it in front of the woman. She takes a sip out of it. This isn't dry enough. Oh, okay. So Dennis comes walking by to me and he says, I've been doing this 15 years. I haven't put a drop of vermouth in a martini yet. Right? So for point of context, what's what's supposed to be in a martini is either vodka or gin and dry vermouth. But in essence, everybody just wants the booze. They don't want the little aperitif or wine or whatever that stuff, whatever it is. So what does he do? He ices down another glass. Make sure that's in her view, right? Pours the vodka so she can see it, not in her face, right? Just kind of like so she can see it. Does the same routine, ices the glass, yada, 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 puts it in front of her. He goes, That's the one. Same drink. But what did we learn here? Well, he could have told her what he told me. You know, ma'am, I've never put a drop of vermouth in them. Right? Now, that happens. There's customers all around. They're listening in. Nobody looks good. So what did he do? He poured out the drink. It's 2 ounces of booze. Nobody's the wiser. Everybody's happy. So the tagline that we use in this is being right. It's overrated.
Mm-hmm. So you were pretty young when you were as a bartender, but did you feel like you were a psychiatrist during that time?
So there were certain times, yes, but depending upon where you worked. I mean, I started when I was 19. I was at a beach bar, and I was working day shifts. I really hadn't got my speed chops down and all that, and that where you would be able to carry on more of a conversation and really do the relationship thing. In other places, because I had pretty quick hands, I always worked the busy nights and the busiest stations, and there was no talking. There was relationships. So like, what do you have? And when we get, boom, here's your transaction, gotta go. So it was, you still were pleasant and whatnot, and try to be as accommodating as possible. But you got to see people. Now you got to pick, okay, who came first? What's going on? Who am I going to tick off if and again, that's another thing about reading the room. Who came first? And it's hard to tell, because they're just coming and coming and coming. And then you get waitresses and waiters coming at you over here. So in certain places, it was very difficult to be that, be that psychiatrist. But yeah, when you had the opportunity, people tell you about their day. People tell you where they ask, they talk about what they want to do or what they're trying to do. So that's where we come in. That's where we would come in with peripheral knowledge. So peripheral knowledge is that stuff outside of your sphere. In this case, your restaurant, your bar. If somebody says, well, in this place, they have one steak on the menu. So they came. I remember somebody asked, I think I'd like a steak, and I'd say, listen. We're predominantly a seafood restaurant. We have a steak on the menu, and it's a good cut of meat. But if you go through the hotel right here and take a left, the Chart House has every cut of meat you want. So what did I do? Did I lose the customer? No. I enhanced my relationship with them because I thought of them first. So hospitality, which we speak a lot about in the book, is sometimes it's doing something that may not affect you directly right away, but come back to you in another form or fashion at another time. So
what prompted you to write the book?
Well, it was, I don't even want to say the word. It was during you know what. And I was trying to keep myself from losing my mind. And one of the things I would do, and I still do it to this day, it's a practice that I do now, part of my positivity practice, starting my day, is I would reach out to people, text them. I try not to call them unless it was my family or something of that nature, or some of the. But some people I hadn't heard from in a while, and I would just do a Neil here. How you doing? Invariably, it's like. We get a phone, half the time I get a phone call back. Neil, what's going on? Because everybody was feeling the same way, right? How are we going to get through this? So one of the guys I talked to, a guy by the name of Terry McMahon, Terry was a wildly successful general agent for Mass Mutual, but his success took him to behaviors where he needed life-saving surgery. Well, he was when I talked to him, he was 18 months out of his surgery, and it was successful. And he had completely changed his life around. And included in that was he wrote a book. And he said, you should write a book. What am I going to write on? Right? What do I have to say? But everybody's got a story to tell. Okay. So I started thinking about it. And about a few years earlier than that, my daughter was honored at a chamber event for the 30 under 30, the 40 under 40, people to watch in certain groups. She was probably in her late 20s or mid to late 20s at the time. And she was one of those people. So as good doting parents, we went. And the guy who gave the keynote speech was the gentleman that brought Five Guys burgers to New Hampshire. And he was great. I mean, he was a nuts and bolts speaker. He was authentic. Is he going to win? Is he going to win a Dale Carnegie Award? Probably not. But he spoke to you, which is kind of my style, and I like it. So, anyways, he was talking about, and obviously very successful. He was talking about pre-meal. Now, did you ever work in hospitality?
No, I have not.
Okay. So one of the things, if you were a waiter or bartender or whatnot, more waiter people on the floor than the bar, because some days at night, we never did any food at night because it was just crazy busy. Days you could serve lunches. So pre-meal was where you got, what's out, what's the special, and, maybe the wine of the night or whatever it may be. And then a little bit of a rah-rah speech. Hey, let's have a great night. Come on, team, go-ish, right? So his speech went something like this. We're not in the burger business. We're not in the fry business. We're not in the soda business. We're not in the shake business. We're in the hospitality business. Now, point of context, my wife and I met at that place, Tia's, I talked to you about. She was a food server, and I was behind the bar. The most unlikeliest of couples, by the way. So anyways, I looked at her and I said, I've never left the bar business. I've been bartending on the road for, at that point, was probably almost 30 years. And I just started thinking about it. So what I did from there is I did a little research. How are other companies or operations or whatnot using hospitality tactics to enhance their engagement with their customers? So I got probably, I forget exactly how long it is. It's chapter 3 in the book that we plugged that in, right? So we had that piece. I also had pieces of little writings that I had done from experiences, like simple experience, heartfelt experiences. We had just had a birthday party for one of the guys that worked with us in my first bar called the Full Sail in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And it was just this really great night because I was a commuter student and I don't have fraternities or, that didn't have that classic college experience. I had a very different college experience, to be sure. The 8-year plan, right? So, yeah. So it was just that, and I just felt compelled to write about it. So I just wrote, I don't even know how many words it was, but it wound up being parts of chapter 2. How certain things about it. And then also I wrote about the area where I grew up, where this Full Sail place was. The camaraderie we had, the people. So it was all part of the first couple of chapters were about my upbringing, my struggles to get through school, and then how I figured out an algorithm to get me through to the other side after failing a couple of times. And I became a pretty good student because I kind of just figured it out on my own. I was the 7th of 8 of an Irish Catholic family.
Wow.
Nobody was paying attention at that point, right? So that's kind of how it started. And then I just started brain dumping certain things that make you successful in the hospitality business, and then that also translates into success on the road, like the simple things, the importance of a proper greeting, and developing relationships. How are you going to, are you active listening, right? Being on time seems simple, right? Things like don't have time named after you. Do you know what I mean by that? Do you have any friends that are chronically late?
Mm-hmm.
And they go, oh, they're on Smith time. You don't want that. No. Oh, he's always late with his proposal. No, don't do that. It's the same thing. That more came from me partially, so that it's the experience of being in school, on the bar, and whatnot that put some of these things together. The most organized wins is a chapter. It's like, are you prepared? Right? Do you have your materials down? Do you know what you're talking about? Do you have a talk track in your head? Do you have a one-sheeter that you can, when you have a 15-minute coffee meeting to talk about with somebody, so you're not wasting their time, can you just give them something, a takeaway, and walk them through it? And so those are the simple things that I just started putting down. And then I talked earlier about peripheral knowledge. That's a chapter. Why is that important? You're helping your clients. You're helping your customers. You know what? I can't do that for you, but I got a guy who can. Let me make that introduction for you, and that'll all work out. And then of course that's also the doorman at a hotel. Where can I get the best steak? Is there a yoga studio nearby? I need to get a workout in. Is there a gym? I need to get a workout in while I'm traveling. Again, the gym here is not, the hotel gyms are never really all that great. So those types of things, product knowledge, of course, being, do you know what you're talking? Do you know what your products are? I mean, it seems logical, but are you putting together a practice of making sure you're staying on top of that? Attitude, aptitude, ability. Do you have the right attitude? Do you have the right appearance? Right? I mean, it's shifted, right? It's not like it used to be, jacket and tie and whatnot. But don't get too crazy with the flamboyance, right? You're not walking in shorts and flip-flops, okay? Let's just not, unless you're selling shorts and flip-flops, right? So, and then your ability. Are you upgrading your skills? Are you doing things, in the bar business, that might be understanding wines better, understanding the various vodkas, the different types of beers you have on tap. Recently, I went to a concert, and I said to the woman, that's Sam Adams Light. How now? There's 8 people back there. Eight people pouring beers. How's that Sam Light? The answer was, I don't know. So in my head, am I going, you or none of the 7 other people have ever poured a Sam Light and had a reaction to it? That's interesting. How does that work? So she kind of failed there. The good news for her is she came back around later on and she got on my good side. So, but it's a $17 purchase these days at a concert. It's not casual. And then as being a former bartender, it's a $4 tip too. It's like a $21 invested in this beer I didn't like. Good for her. I brought it back. She did the right thing. What would you like? I said, well, I understand what Sam Lager tastes like. Why don't you give me one of those? And she did. So it all worked out. So she kind of redeemed herself, but she could have, if we're talking like Dennis Mayer did with the vodka martini, if she just said on the upfront, listen, it's not like a Bud Light, it's not like a Miller, it's a little different taste. Mm-hmm. And then or of course in those venues they're not going to give you a pour and give you a taste, right?
Right. All right. So for people who are in the sales business, what are some simple steps they can take to increase their sales using some advice that you provide in your book and just from your own personal life experience?
So the process that we now operate under, that has been a lifelong development. You take a piece here, this worked. You take a piece there, that worked, and whatnot. And we've had a lot of success in my years in the food business, then my years in the sporting goods, athletic footwear and apparel business, and now for the last 27 years in the swag business is our primary business. And it's a simple process, and that is, you need to understand who can buy what you sell, right? But prior to that, I jumped ahead. Let me walk you back a second. What now has happened? We have a program, and we do a chapter on it in the book, but there's so much more. We have a whole separate. We don't even put it in our guidebook for the book, because the program and the process is called positive activity. So positive activity is the sum total now, I would suggest, of how we operate today. So let's see, I think she was, 2012 or so, 12 or so years ago, my daughter got injured in college and had, and with that injury, certain things happened, and it wasn't a pleasant affair. She's fine now. She's lovely. She's done monstrous stuff. But while she was home with us and spending her natural senior year home with us in college, she played lacrosse in college. So she got injured playing lacrosse. And one of the things that she wanted to do is she started reading things she couldn't read. She would listen to books, and she listened to Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. So one of the things that she wanted to do, there was this mindful practice fair in town here. And she heard about it and said to my wife, would you take me to this? Because at the time she couldn't drive either. My wife said, sure. So she went, and it was all about, holistic behaviors, massage therapies, Reiki therapies, all these things, meditation. And then, so my wife bought in almost immediately. And at the time, we both were practicing yoga. We've been practicing yoga for 15 or so years. And so it kind of dovetailed nicely with that. And then further study brought us into really understanding the power of positivity and happiness and all that, and how we can control that. We can control a whole heck of a lot of it, but how you shift your mind. And so, so we also studied a book called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Achor. I would recommend it highly to all your whole audience. And if they just want to get a little taste, just go to YouTube and listen to his TED Talk. And that's Sean, SHAWN, Achor, ACHOR. So we've taken practices from there, practices from the 4 agreements, using our meditation practice. And so it all bundled into the beginning part of positive activity. So positive activity is the practice, because we don't think anything's perfect, right? So it's a practice of getting your mindset right in a place of positivity. And certain practices you do in the morning prior to looking at the email that's going to give you a neck ache or whatever that may be. We go through these steps every day. So we're in a place of open-minded, divergent thinking, solution providing, creativity. So very rarely at this stage of my life do I ever feel boxed in. It's not 100%, but we're more solution providers because of our attitude and in our aptitude as well. Like we know what we're doing. We know how to read the room. We know how to do all those things that are in the book. So that's how you get yourself. So once you get your mind, so now you're in the creative mode. Then you've got your productivity steps. So what I started to allude to was the productivity steps, but this stuff is paramount to get started. And oh, by the way, you can do all those steps in 10 minutes in the morning. It's not like, it's not like you're spending all day doing it. Right. So now you've got your productivity steps. So if you're in business development, which we're all in some form, if you're in business, you've got some development thought process going, unless you just can't do anymore. And that's where you have to understand who can buy what you sell. So many times over the years, I've talked to salespeople that I've worked with, and I would look at them and said, why are you going after them? That's not anybody that can use your stuff, right? So you need to know what is it you're selling, who can buy what you sell. And then once you've determined who that is, what is your list of those people? How are you developing prospects of your ideal target client? In which case we talk about the group, which is your family, your friends, your business associates, all that. And there's 2 reasons why we want them to know what you're doing. One, they may be able to buy what you're doing, depending upon what you're selling. But they're going to be a good referral source. And the best way to be a good referral source, they go, oh, Neil does that. Why don't you talk to Neil about that? Right? Then there's the group you meet. So the group you meet that's where you go into. That may be the referral. That may be someone you met at a cocktail party, at a charity event, at some sort of. You met at a. I just God. Here's one for you. I just met this woman over at this lunch place. She's wound up. It's kind of like I was sitting at a rail in the middle of the deal, and she just kind of like sat there. Just came down. She had a nice smile on her face. We said hello. How are you? Just that and the other thing, and so it got around to what is it you do? Well, she's someone that I think we could. It was a great networking opportunity. So I immediately asked her, "Are you okay with linking in?" So sure. She had the funky way to share her contact. I haven't got that, and so next thing you know, boom, she's on there. She's sending me, "Oh, nice to meet you." I said, "Great, nice to see you. Let me know if there's anything I can tell you about our area. I'll help you out. Where to go, where not to go, all that stuff, right?" So we're developing a relationship in about 2 minutes, right? So now there's some sort of follow-up that should happen there, and we did. The follow-up has already happened, and it's come back. But typically, when we talk about campaigns, what is your systematic way of getting in front of somebody? So just because I meet Melvin at that counter, and Melvin says, "Yeah, hey Neil, I really dig what you're talking about. How about you send me some? I'd be interested." Okay. It'd be naive to think that Melvin goes home and is sitting there waiting for Neil to call, right? And be like, "No, I met this guy. Yeah, he seemed like a nice guy. Seemed like he knew what he was talking about. Maybe there's something, maybe there's not." But you go back to your life and your work and what's going on, right? So how am I then going to follow up in a systematic way? You have to be creative. There has to be something, well, the good news is in today's world, you've got LinkedIn, you've got all these tools where you've got ChatGPT, you've got all these ways you can find out more about somebody or whatnot, especially if they're out there. So so you then systematically market to them, and we happen to propose that you use 7 significant touches in order to get in front of somebody. That's kind of the general rule of thumb. If you search for it, it's only general rule of thumb. I don't know anybody that's done any true statistics on it, but that's kind of what, and I believe it, and that's what we've worked over the years. It used to be like in the sporting goods business or in the footwear and the food business, I could walk in as my first touch, right? So here's what I do. And then also be cognizant of it's kind of a cold call. I'm not here to waste your time. I don't want to interrupt you. So that's my first little entree back then. Today, we've got to do everything remotely because everybody's remote. And getting into a building is not the way it once was prior to 9/11, right? So you have to have some way to do it. So we do use digital, but we use a lot of direct mail. And a lot of personalized direct mail and a lot of lumpy direct mail. So when you send a dimensional piece, think about it when you get something at home or at your office. If it's dimensional, it's getting opened, right? And if there's some little starburst on the outside or something a little bit more exciting, it's a little bit more intriguing if there's a note on there. Now, we try not to make it too manufactured or pre-printed. We don't want it to look like over-polished, like it was done for that. The whole point is that there's some customization for that person. And if it's handwritten, it's even better. So those are the things. So that now we've got engagement. We're looking for that coffee meeting. Can I come in? Can we get on a Zoom? Can I come in? Can we meet in a coffee shop nearby? And then, so there's where you have to have your one-sheeter we talked about before, where I put down in front of you, these are the types of services I can provide you based on what I saw online, based on my research. I think this is where we can be of help to you. But prior to that, this is where your other skills come in. You need to set the parameters of the meeting, because you want to show respect for their time. So you ask them straight up, how much time do we have? Well, we're scheduled for 15, but if we go a half, it's good. Okay, great. Let me just tell you, let me walk you through my quick little spiel about us. But then I want to hear a heck of a lot about you and what your challenges are. And I'll be a sounding board and where we might be able to help. And then when we're done with this, maybe we have a reason to move forward. Does that sound good to you? Who says no to that? Right? So it's the scope of appointment. It's the upfront contract in the Sandler world, but it's a simple way of getting through the first appointment, showing what you have to show, being an active listener. So one of the big things I hope everybody takes away is being an active listening is the next. That's how you get your relationship to the next level in any walk. For whether it's personal, whether it's professional, doesn't matter. People. Now we'll talk about Dale Carnegie. What did Dale say? People want to talk about themselves. They want to talk about their business. Tell about their kids. Let them go. And then, but here's the rub. Here's the challenge for most people, especially if they're salespeople, and it's you. With every fiber of your being, sit back and listen. Take notes where appropriate. Show that you're listening. And then maybe come back to a point on something for a little bit more, for them to expound a little bit more on something. Shows interest, right? And it's authentic, right? It's what this is really intriguing about your business. I think this is somewhere where I can help you. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? So that's the process that we go through all the time, and it's ongoing. It ebbs and flows. Sometimes we do it, and what I suggest to people, because Melvin, there are no shoulds, right? Mentors suggest, coaches tell. We suggest that they try 90 days. Of that little package I just told you about, that positive activity package. And what happens is, so when you get your productivity steps and you're doing this stuff every day, and granted, some days are going to go smoother than others. And that's where we say, have a little grace for yourself. If you didn't get to call your 3 prospects today, do it tomorrow. Right? Your day blew up. An order went wrong. Whatever the challenge is, just get right back on it and try to stay within that framework as best you can and do it for 90 days. And years ago, there was a restaurant I worked in. It was called The Wharf, and it was prior to I was a bar back there, and I was washing dishes. And this guy, he was a friend of mine's uncle. And we became friendly too, and I'm friendly with his family and his kids and all that. And he always had these little quips. He had a good one. And I was like, oh, wait, hey, Fred, look at all these new restaurants that are coming out. He says, Neil, people beget people. Activity begets activity. So once you've got your productivity steps down and you're doing those every day, plus or minus, grace for things that come up and go awry, you'll look up after 90 days, and there's a multiplier effect to this. You won't recognize where you came from. And you can do that. And you can take this process in anything you do. I just did it. I recently did it. Well, about this time last year, I should say, not recently. I've been the other thing I did when I was trying to keep myself from losing my mind during never be named again. It was, I got back into music. And that was not, I'm not saying like, I always did it for my own personal gratification and all that. Yes, I can jump in with a band and sing a song or whatnot. And the woman, so I saw this woman, a friend of mine posted to Facebook that she's been singing and playing the piano. I said, where are you doing that? So I said, sign me. Who do I talk to? What do we do? She hooked me up with the executive director. I've been there 4 years. Have not left. I've never. And what she said to me was, because she knew I played the piano a little bit, she goes, all right, if you're going to sing, we want you to play and sing. all right, I guess we'll get there. And I was resistant to it because I just didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to accompany myself. So finally, she said it one more time. I said, all right, you got to show me how I'm going to do this. And I understood chords, and I understood. So she took me through a process of what to do, how you're going to learn the chord structures and inversions so you can stay in the middle of the piano. Your hands don't, well, okay, that sounds logical to me. And so 90 days later, there I was on the stage singing. What was I singing? I think my first one I did was an old Burt Bacharach favorite called "The House Is Not a Home." Now, it wasn't quite like Luther Vandross did it. like not even in the same stratosphere, but it was pretty good, right? But it was like I had the confidence to do it. I even had the confidence. This is the interesting thing. The assistant executive director came up to me afterwards. She goes, "What'd you think of your performance?" I said, "Cody, you know God's honest truth? I think it was pretty good. You know why? I got lost and found my way home. I decided to do a piano solo, and I got lost. And I'm like, going, all right, how am I getting out of this? How am I going to do this? Okay, if you go to F major, you're in. Just get there. Okay, boom, F major, G minor, A minor, D7 flat 9. Boom, we're off to the races." So it can be done anyway. So, and one of the things about the book is, I'll tell you, a friend of mine said to me, and this is I think it's been the greatest compliment I got to it. And so he said, "Neil, I really loved your book. Is that how you did the other stuff?" I said, "Yeah." So the other stuff would include, I've got a son. Our son is a 33-year-old man he's a non-speaking autistic man. And we call him, we don't even like to use the A word anymore because he's got apraxia, which is, it affects his front motor cortex. But anyways, over the years, we had 18 years, we did a foundation for special needs education in our town. When we graduated from that, which means they age out of the system at like 21 and a half or something of that nature. Now it's like really the Wild West. What are we going to do now? Well, we started the first of its kind special needs classroom in community college for intensive needs, not high functioning people, but I mean, Craig's pretty involved. And so, and we've never stopped. So now we found this program because we never stop, because we're always positive, because we're always looking, we're always talking, we're always networking, or seeing outside the box people, and where it's not going to, where it makes sense, we do it. We discovered a way to communicate with them. And Melvin, we've never heard from this guy, and he's brilliant. Brilliant. He knows everything.
Wow.
It's astounding what he knows. Quick one. It was, you read them age-appropriate lessons. And by the way, for all your listeners, and for anybody who's got a non-speaking autistic, spelling to communicate, I want to sing it from the mountaintops, because in the end, I can't bear the thought of another 8-year-old, 10-year-old that's being taught simple math again when they can solve for X. And that's what frustrates these guys. That's where the behaviors come in. That's why they get flappy. That's why so it's, and his behaviors have completely shifted now. He's calm. He's got a swagger. I mean, nobody's been listening to him for 30 years.
Wow.
So what happens is, real quick, you read him age-appropriate lessons. I think his first one was on Stephen Hawking's. And one of the ones I read, two of the great ones, I always tell these stories, and I get goosebumps every time I tell the story. The first one is, it was a story, a lesson, not a story, it's because it's age appropriate. It was on cells. So in the body of the paragraph, first paragraph, there's molecules, DNA, the acronym. So then there's requisite questions they say about if that's in the body of the paragraph. So you read those, then you might have some prior knowledge questions. So at the time, I had a coach with me, and her name is Beth, one of the greatest human beings on the planet, by the way, Beth Fried. And I said, "What do you think, Beth? Can I ask him?" She goes, "Go ahead." "Craig, what does the acronym DNA stand for?" Now, how he does this, He spells it on a 26-letter board with a pen. We always give him a chopstick because it's stenciled. And so that's how you know he's hitting the right letter. You can see it. You ready? Deoxyribonucleic nucleic acid. That's DNA.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
The other one I'd like to tell, and I'll wrap it up on this one because it's really about persistence and staying tenacious in finding these solutions. Remember I told you we're in solution mode all the time because we're positive and we're creative. There's a picture in one of these lessons. It's of Muhammad Ali. So once again, I asked Beth, what do you think? She goes, go ahead. Because by the way, there's no mention of him anywhere. And I said, Greg, who's that in the picture? Muhammad Ali. Pretty impressive, right?
Yeah, it is.
You ready for this? Greg, what's his real name? Cassius Clay. Now, Melvin, you tell me how he knows that. It's crazy.
I've had a similar experience with my grandson, who's 6 years old. He's nonverbal, and he's been able to spell words since he was about 2 years old. So he could spell words that other 2-year-olds couldn't say. So he would write out. We bought him a bunch of magnetic letters, and he would write out on the refrigerator what he wanted, like wanted a snack or wanted whatever it was, wanted to watch a TV show. And he always spelled things correctly. That's what blew me away. He never misspelled anything.
Are you okay with sharing his diagnosis?
I other than autism, I don't know the diagnosis.
Okay, so he's on the spectrum. Okay, yeah. I would introduce. I mean, there may be some benefit to introducing him to. So I would take is it your daughter or your son?
My daughter. Yeah.
I would take your daughter. You might want to buy her the book Underestimated, or buy it for yourself and read it and give it to her. And that's where our journey began. This may be a benefit to him. He may be off to the races with something else, Melvin. But it's worth. You'll read it and you'll go, oh, this has been our journey, right? And then the other thing is here's a change in vernacular. It sounds a lot better to be a non-speaker than nonverbal. Because here's the reason why. Nonverbal, I believe it's in Greek, is a derivative of the word, says you don't have words. You know your grandson has a lot of words. A lot of words. So he's a non-speaker. Yeah. So I'm getting goosebumps. I hope you do this and it works and helps him and all that. And then if you do, sing it from the mountaintops like I've been doing.
Absolutely. All right, Neil, that's a great way to wind up this episode. Thanks a lot for sharing your stories. So our guest today has been business leader and author Neil Rogers. Neil, thanks so much for joining me today. I appreciate you coming on the show from New Hampshire. Been good to hear your stories today.
Thank you, Melvin. It's been great. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks a lot. So if you're new here, please subscribe and follow this podcast so you never miss an episode. And please share it with a friend. I would greatly appreciate it. That's it for this week's episode of Stories from Real Life. Join us again next week for another storytelling journey. Until then, don't forget to shine your light wherever you go.
That was Stories from Real Life. Join us again next week for another great storytelling journey. See you next time.